In today's episode, we're going to be exploring the future of downtown San Antonio, a potential SAWS rate increase, and what our city will look like years from now following the passage of Propositions A and B. My guest today is David McGee, CEO of Amegy Bank for the Central Texas region. His list of accomplishments are far too long for me to mention here, but I can tell you he has chaired the Greater San Antonio Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. He's been inducted into the San Antonio Business Hall of Fame, and more recently, he was named in the San Antonio Business Journal's list of South Texas power players. David is a friend and a colleague, and David, I want to welcome you to the show. You came to San Antonio when you were in high school, and I know that you've left over the years and then come back. How have you seen San Antonio change since you first got here?
Yeah, well, great question. Well, first of all, San Antonio is a great community. I absolutely love San Antonio, and that's the reason why I came back ultimately after I got married. But very fortunate to have been able to go off to school. I worked really hard. I had to put myself through school and ended up in Dallas in a training program with a bank. But my heart was always to come back to San Antonio. So there was an opportunity to start a novo bank on the north side of San Antonio. And I had been in banking for about 6 years, and I fit all the criteria. I thought, this is my ticket. Paul and I had been married for about 30 days when I uprooted her from Dallas and moved her down 35 to San Antonio, which she would probably tell you that at first she came kind of kicking and screaming, but even today you could not take her out of San Antonio. We just love this place.
And at one point, Amegy Bank's history began in San Antonio, began with you. So
yeah.
Tell me that story.
Yeah, so Amegy Bank actually began in Houston in 1990, and the founder was a guy named Walter Johnson, who had been one of the original founders of Allied Bank. So you're an old banker, and you remember that. And he had sold that bank to Wells Fargo. And there was a local bank in the 90s that had gotten into trouble. If you remember, back in the 90s, the economy was kind of up and down in Texas. We were coming out of a really tough oil slump, and a lot of dependency on the oil prices in Texas. Real estate market had been in the doldrums. 3 of the largest banks in the state of Texas essentially failed, and the fourth one ended up merging with a New York bank. And so here this family had started a small bank on the northwest side of Houston, and they needed a consultant to come in and help them turn this bank around. And Walter said, I don't want to consult. Why don't I buy your bank from you? And so it was a $50 million bank that he bought with some entrepreneurs in Houston, and it became Amegy Bank, which by 2000 was a publicly traded bank in Houston. So I came into the picture because several of the folks that had joined Walter to help Amegy Bank grow were colleagues of mine in one of my prior banking lives. And they called me and said, you're not having that much fun at that big bank. Wouldn't you really like to start a bank from scratch? And I said, well, wait a second. I'm actually president of this big bank, and I can walk down the street and people know the name of that bank, and it feels pretty good. Well, you're not really having that much fun. And I really trusted these people. But what I really knew is that San Antonio is a community that's built on relationships. And so while financial services at a high level are important to help our economy grow, I knew what we didn't have enough of was sizable commercial banks that could actually help customers go to that next level. And that's what really appealed to me. I knew that we could build a culture around being a holistic bank with a broad range of services. As San Antonio continued to grow, we were needing more of that. And so I started Amegy Bank from scratch in San Antonio in January of 2007.
And been here since.
And have been growing it for 18 years, yes.
You were located by the airport. You can see the building from going north on 281 on the east side of 281. And you made the decision to move downtown. Tell me the thought process behind that decision.
Yeah. There's more to it, but the punchline is this. We're a bank, and we're chartered to serve the community. And downtown has gone through a really tough economic period post-COVID. And we had grown to the point where we were out of space and we were looking for a new home. And I said to my management team, look, there are opportunities in downtown San Antonio. We're a bank. We're chartered to serve the community. We have a responsibility. If we can provide any level of economic stimulus to downtown, we need to be a part of that. And so we have 70 people. We're a $2.5 billion bank. We're not the biggest bank. We don't have the largest number of people. We're probably not going to transform downtown San Antonio by ourselves, but we can do our part. And that's really at the core of it. That's why we moved downtown. On a personal level, it was always my dream to be downtown. It just says something about your commitment to a community when you've got your name on a big building in downtown, pick a city. Great cities, do have great downtowns. And so I'm also extremely excited about all the opportunities and the development that's happening in downtown. I'm just so pleased to see our leaders finally, dreaming big and going for something really huge.
When COVID hit, I was working for a downtown bank, and the only thing that was missing was watching tumbleweeds blow through downtown because it was a ghost town.
Sure, yeah.
And I think San Antonio has struggled a little more than some of the other major cities, but we're beginning to see a lot of movement and a lot of activity with buildings being converted from commercial to residential.
Sure.
You're seeing new people like Amegy Bank move into downtown. You make people like Trish DeBerry at Centro very happy. Well, and you had started a conversation with her.
Well, Trish, first of all, Centro was really helpful to us and really helping our employees understand what the opportunity was downtown. But yeah, I understand. A lot of major cities are having that challenge, post COVID. And you've seen some restaurants close, and that just becomes a bit of a spiral in the wrong direction. We moved downtown because we wanted to be the impetus going the other direction. And so I've got 70 really well-paid people that need a place to eat lunch and to entertain people, and that's kind of why we're down there. But my wife and Paul and I were down over the fall break with our grandkids, and we were walking on the river. And wow, it was completely packed. We went over to the Alamo. It was completely packed. And it just felt so good. And so, unlike other major cities, we have, a culture that's genuine and attractions that people still want to be a part of that really enrich their lives. And so we've got that cornerstone that we need to continue to build on, and how we make that transformation to just office and entertainment to something, living spaces as well. It's going to be important, and there's a lot of people making big commitments to make that happen. So I'm very high on downtown San Antonio.
So when COVID first hit, you were still up on 281 near the airport.
Right.
Did you have any departments? I mean, you're as a bank, you can't work remotely and cash a customer's check.
That's hard to do.
But tell me did you have any departments that were working remotely during COVID?
Yeah. The answer is ultimately no. We were all back in the office very, very, very quickly. But I'll never forget the first phone call I got from HR saying, hey, you might want to think about sending your people home for a couple of weeks. And you know me, I'm pretty competitive. Like, that's not going to happen, because I know what happens when they're remote. They just sort of find all kinds of other things to, pay attention to. But look, none of us really knew how bad COVID was going to get, right? And so we did what everybody else did. We got lucky. We had actually loaded Teams on everybody's computers about 6 months earlier.
Oh, wow.
And only the young people knew what any of that did. And so we quickly implemented training on Teams so that I could check in on them about 3 times a day to make sure they were actually working. But so, of course, the retail branches, essential service, did need to remain open. But I've been so blessed to have a group of people that really like working with each other. So once we understood a little bit more about COVID, and we did send a lot of people home in sort of shifts, if you will, to give people adequate space, my bankers were calling me saying, look, I want to be back in the office. I really miss the social aspect. the exchange of knowledge. That's part of why I come to work every day, is to be able to do that. And so within about 90 days, Eddie, I had everybody back in the office. And mask, no mask, who cares? I just said, look, take every precaution you can to keep each other safe. But they were back in the office.
You know, over my lifetime, I can't tell you how much I learned from being around when I was in my 20s from someone who was in their 50s or 60s or even 40s. It was just a lot older, much more experienced, and they would share with me things that they wish they had done differently, or things that I need to be careful of or look out for. And you don't get that with remote work.
No, not at all. You miss that whole mentorship, the exchange of knowledge. You can probably do tasks very well from home, but in our business and a lot of businesses like us, things move pretty quickly. And so just taking the time, having to take the time to do an email or find somebody or track them down, things don't move as fast. But, I mean, how much of our communication is body language?
I never used my intercom system when I was at the bank if I needed to speak to someone in the building. I would get in the elevator and go down to their office or go up to their office and go talk to them face to face because I wanted to see their facial reactions, every time we had a conversation.
Huge value in that.
And when you talk on the phone, it tends to be transactional. And when you see someone in person, you might be reminded, I need to also ask you about these other two things. And so it continues to be a struggle, I think, for a lot of companies, to your point about the sense of entitlement.
Well, in an odd kind of way, COVID was opened the door for us to be downtown because there were so many vacancies at the very time when we had all of our people together, and we needed a lot more space. And so that was an opportunity for us.
For the people who don't know you, you're involved in so many things, and you talk a lot about servant leadership. So tell me what that means to you and why, because that is something that's at your core from how I know you.
Right. It's a respect for other people. I have my own opinions. I grew up in a paradigm that was my family and my environment and all the rest. And I guess I'm just fortunate to have been raised by parents who respected other people and their opinions. And so I just have a skill set around listening to other people. And so I have learned that if you'll let them kind of challenge you and share with you kind of their paradigm or where they're coming from, you may find a better mousetrap in the middle of all that. And so it really gets down to that. But at the core of it, it's really my faith. As a follower of Jesus Christ, we're to respect all people, no matter who you are, what you look like, where you came from. God values you, and so I'm a fairly competitive person, and so it's actually something that I continue to work on. Is how do I listen to people and really respect them when I've got some gifting and some talent and some competitiveness. I mean, that's my own personal battle that I go through every single day. So,
and you've also talked about one thing that you have said is leading other people is a privilege.
Oh, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
So how so?
Yeah, well, there's a responsibility. If you're in leadership, you need to be accountable. You're going to be accountable, and so ultimately, the team. I've been so fortunate to have surrounded myself with people that are smarter than me. If I have one gift, it's finding people that are smarter than me, which, by the way, isn't a very high bar. So there's a lot of people to pick from. And, they've got families and dreams. And it is so look, people professionally want to be successful. They want to take care of their family. They want to fulfill whatever financial plan they have. But I've been so fortunate to find people who just who trust each other, who want to accomplish something together, who want to fulfill a mission, in a like-minded kind of way. And so I just take that responsibility so seriously. And I'm always willing to challenge myself. What's that old saying that if as a leader you're in a room where people are not challenging you, you're in the wrong room.
Right.
And so
And my parents used to always say, surround yourself with people smarter than you so you can learn from them.
yeah, absolutely.
You used that when you were serving on the SAWS board. You just rolled off that board.
Sure.
You were on for about 10 years. And I saw times when you challenged the board and the staff when you thought something wasn't being done correctly. The one example I think that comes to mind recently in the past couple of years was the discovery that SAWS was leaking water and SAWS couldn't find the source.
Right.
So tell me about that experience.
Well, first of all, let me just say that I am so impressed with the SAWS organization. They have one of the most complicated business models on the planet, and I see businesses in every industry, every spectrum you can imagine. Here's their business model.
Yeah.
When you're 4 years old, we teach you not to buy our product. When you get older and you want to buy a bunch of it, we don't have enough to sell you. And then when we have a lot to sell you, God's given it away for free, so you don't really need it. Okay, that's a really crazy business model. And on top of all of that, we have to make sure that we're prepared to provide peak level of service because your health and safety depend upon that. So the capital that is required. So you have to always be invested at the top level, even though we're teaching you not to buy it, and you may not be able to have it when you want it. So anyway, but I'm so privileged to serve with a group of fantastic people. I really believe that it's the most effective board in our community. Everybody sitting on that board had different professional skill sets. They had different backgrounds. They all have very strong communication skills. They're strong-willed people. And somehow we found a way with our differences, and some of our differences are really far apart,
Right.
to show respect for each other and say, look, we're all in it for one reason, and that is to try to help San Antonio move forward. I'd like to say that the most important thing for growth is capital, financial capital, and a good bank.
As a banker.
But I really think that moving forward, two things are really going to determine our future. Number one is education, and number two is access to water. So I got on that board initially just to make sure that the Vista Ridge project was successful.
That was huge for San Antonio's future.
It was, and at the time we thought that it was way more water than we would ever need. Last summer we used every bit of that water during the drought. Wow. So who would have thought, right? So that was successful, but in the process, there were other issues that came up where I felt like, just given my background, I could be helpful. And I just think it's important when you're serving on a board like that if you have a critical thought or you see something that's maybe flawed, is to be respectful enough to the professionals involved to talk to them privately and give them a chance to work on that. And then if it doesn't work, then it's your responsibility to make it more publicly known that, hey, we're not going in the right direction. So.
And what is the status of the leak issue?
Yeah, so it's first of all, the first probably the first step in solving a problem is acknowledging you have one. Okay, and that was a bit of a challenge because we've got thousands of miles of transmission pipes at SAWS, and they range in age from 100 years old to 20 years old. They're brand new pipes that we just put in, and there's different materials. So it's a pretty complicated process to figure out, where the leaks really are, and there's no system that's perfect. There's not a single water system in the United States or anywhere in the world that doesn't have some leakage, because the soil will contract and expand, and you'll have some issues
Breakage,
that you
yeah.
deal with. But it's really pretty simple. It's like, how much water do you pull out of the ground, and how much is going through people's meters? And if you can't account for something in between, you got a leak. And so that's the process that we went through. So we've identified, I say we, I'm still very proud of my time at SAWS, always be part of their team. But they've certainly acknowledged that we're losing somewhere between 30 and 40,000 acre feet of water a year, and we need to. They're going through a very methodical process of taking the most the riskiest parts of that distribution system and diagnosing whether or not they can solve for a leak in that zone. Old mains, as an example, old water mains are a real problem.
And you talked about access to water. This is a critical issue. We're experiencing it statewide. Corpus Christi.
Nationwide.
Yeah, well, true. And Corpus Christi just voted down a desal plant, and they're talking about having somewhere between 12 and 18 months of water left if they don't do something. Data centers are becoming a big part of our life because of artificial intelligence. They are large users of both electricity and water. How concerned are you on the SAWS side of things that the use of water from data centers can also limit our ability to continue serving the community?
It's something we're really going to have to pay close attention to. Unavoidably, we live in a desert in San Antonio. We get 21, inches of rain on average every single year, and so if you move further north, north of Austin, up into Waco and into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you'll see, open water reservoirs. And the difference is we live in a desert, and what water evaporates, and theirs doesn't. They get a lot more rainfall. So these data centers are going to use a lot of water, and the ability to recycle and maintain a closed loop and capture that water so that we're not losing it, it's going to be a real challenge for everybody.
SAWS is expected to go before the City Council in 2026 for a rate increase. How do you see that progressing?
Well, I'm not on the board today, so I can't tell you what's really happening. But I'm fairly confident that they are going to be able to justify for our ratepayers a need for a rate increase. I would suspect that that'll be phased in over some period of time. SAWS did one other thing that's just remarkable, and that is they were facing 10 years ago a consent decree by the EPA over leaky sewage pipes. That's a issue that's not unique to San Antonio. We all know the story in Flint, Michigan. You can't see these things, so they can go hidden.
Right.
But San Antonio recognized the issue, diagnosed it with some of the most amazing technology. They're literally sending drones through the sewer to map where any of those leaks might be and identify where they could actually resolve problems. But in a matter of 6 or 7 years, they had spent $700-800 million resolving that issue, which they did with virtually no rate increase. And that was to the benefit of San Antonio. Having said that, we now need to address the leakage issue, and that's going to take many hundreds of millions of dollars to do. If you do the math, we're losing somewhere around $100 million in value in water a year today. So the challenge is, how do we capture that? And you're going to have to make an investment in our distribution system to be able to capture that and then pay for itself over time. So last thing I'll say is, if you compare San Antonio, I know our water bills are high. It's hard for everybody. But we still have some of the cheapest water in the state of Texas in San Antonio. Our bills are still lower than Dallas or Houston or Austin.
So would you say three things come to mind that are going to impact SAWS and their ability to serve the public? Number one, in 2024, San Antonio was the fastest growing city in the United States, and we're told by demographers that we're on par to reach that goal again in 25.
Right.
So the organic growth of the community is going to continue to be an issue.
Right. And we're doing everything to make it grow even more.
Yeah, we are. Right. And number two would be the leakage issue, and number three would be the data center. Are those sort of the top three? I'm assuming those all have a major impact on agencies like SAWS and CPS to serve the community.
Yeah, sure. I think it's going to be important that we also pay close attention to just conservation as a community. and we're fortunate. Remember, I talked about teaching you when you're 4 years old not to buy our product. And so that water IQ is really high in San Antonio. We use less water per person per year in San Antonio than they do in Phoenix, Arizona. Let that sink in for just a minute.
Say that again?
We use less water per person per year in San Antonio than they do in Phoenix, Arizona.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I think we take pride in that as a community, that we don't waste water. And so with the challenges that you just talked about, I'm confident that we will continue to just make sure that we use every drop of it efficiently. We have 8 sources of water today. When I was in high school in San Antonio, we had 1 source of water, the Edwards Aquifer. And today we have 8 different sources of water. So we're probably one of the most diversified cities in terms of our water resources. The most expensive of that being desal water, which we still have capacity to ramp that up if we need to.
And the desal here is treating brackish water.
Sure. It's taking groundwater that's not potable water, but
Right.
just filtering it a little bit.
Whereas desal in Corpus is literally ocean water.
Completely different economics. I mean, that's going to be a real challenge from a rate standpoint in Corpus Christi or anywhere along the ocean. The technology's been there for a long time. It's expensive. You think about it, you're running low-level salt water through filters. I almost gave a brand name I'm not supposed to use. And versus really high dense salt water into those same filters. It's electricity. That's really what.
And you're removing the minerals and putting the minerals back into the bay while you're using the treated water.
You'll have to find a subsurface repository for that salt. Yeah, for sure.
And I think that this is an issue. When you talk about conservation, I'll admit that all the way from childhood through high school, I was one of the people that let the water run when I was brushing my teeth.
Right.
When I got to Lubbock as a freshman at Texas Tech University, I was bombarded with TV commercials that taught me that this is a semi-arid part of the state.
Right.
We have limited access to water, and all of their water was one source, and that was the Ogallala Aquifer,
Right.
which stretches like under 6 states. And so when we got married and we were raising our kids, I taught that to our children. Turn the water off. It's not free, and we need to save it for other resources. So to your point about conservation, I think there's a lot more. And I don't know that – I always wondered – Austin does rain barrels. They give rebates for rain barrels so that you can do some of your landscaping or your garden or whatever.
We do too.
Saws does now?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there other things that we should be doing as homeowners or residents of the community from a conservation standpoint?
Well, I think first and foremost, as we grow and people come here from out of town or from out of state, they need to understand what the situation is. You can be, the capitalism and environmentalism are not mutually exclusive concepts at all. And I think we're in a reasonably balanced way today. But I hope that people that come here, developers from outside, and I understand their motivation. We can't blame them for that. Need to understand that we really do have to make sure that, when we think about, landscaping and irrigation for landscaping.
So I want to segue to another topic, and that was the passage of Propositions A and B. You were very vocal on that front. You wrote an op-ed in the San Antonio Express-News about why we needed to pass those. So tell me what those 2 propositions meant for you.
I didn't come up with this on my own. Somebody else said this. It's a hemisphere moment. It really is.
Hemisphere was a changing moment for our city in 1968.
Absolutely. I was fortunate enough to know Red McCombs personally and hear the stories from him about how challenging it was to bring the hemisphere to San Antonio, both in terms of just marketing San Antonio and then the financial aspects of that. Unavoidably it requires money to do those kinds of things, and how hard our city leadership at that time and the private sector came alongside leadership to make that happen. That really changed San Antonio. And so, when we think about attracting the right businesses to San Antonio, I think about it in terms of, what is our biggest challenge in this community? And that is our average wages are lower than the rest of the state. That is the biggest challenge. You can talk about the reasons for that. Education is an issue, but the bottom line is our wages are lower than they should be, and we need to work really hard on that. How are we going to do that? Attracting businesses that pay more is going to help you with that. So when you think about San Antonio and trying to attract some of these high-wage employers, it's just true. The San Antonio Spurs are winners. They're world champions. And you walk into the office of a CEO in Shanghai or New York or Frankfurt, and they know about San Antonio because of the San Antonio Spurs. It's the greatest marketing tool we have. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. And so I spoke out about Prop A and Prop B because, first of all, I felt like there needed to be some independent voices out there. I didn't have a stake in the game at all, literally. I'm not, a financial partner to any of them, but I am in a position to be able to understand the financial tools that were being used, and I could understand how the average person really maybe wasn't familiar, and there's a level of distrust with our elected officials when you start talking about complicated financial matters, and I felt like I had an objective position to be able to speak up and say, I've looked at it, and this is how I see it. And how I see it is this is a huge opportunity for us to aim high and to have our visitors pay for the majority of that. And the parts of it that we're going to pay for, we were going to pay for those anyway. And I can get into more of that detail, but I really felt passion. I still do. I'm very grateful that the voters, despite a lot of confusion, got it right, in my personal opinion.
So my wife Christina and I chair the capital campaign for the Alameda Theater, which is set to open in either late 27 or early 28. And
thank you for doing that, by the way.
Oh, it's an amazing project, and we're at about the 75% mark of the money that we have raised to where we need to be to finish it out. But you have that going on. You have on slightly west of that, you have the new San Antonio Missions baseball stadium that's going to go up.
Right.
To the east of that, you're going to have the new Spurs Arena going up. And then in between there, you're going to have a sports and entertainment district. So tell me 10 years from now what downtown is going to look like and feel like. And I'm assuming that all that activity coming on the heels of Amegy moving downtown was, just solidified your decision that it was the right thing to do to move downtown.
Well, I tell my management team all the time, moving downtown is either going to be the smartest thing or the dumbest thing I ever do. But I'm looking pretty smart right now. We are all looking very smart because none of that was a certainty at the time that we made that commitment. We still felt like we could help. And wow, I mean, what's that old saying? The problem isn't that people aim high and miss; it's that they aim low and hit.
Yeah.
And we are aiming high. And we deserve that as a community. We have an incredible city. We have an awesome culture. We have a diverse community that works together and a lot to offer the rest of the state, the rest of the world. And man, to see some of the private sector leadership now joining with the public sector to really do something transformational that is world class. I mean, we are world class. That's kind of how I feel about San Antonio. But this really does put us in a different league, in my personal opinion. And I get people are going to have differences of opinion on this, and it's a little bit emotional. But man, that's a great question, Eddie. What does it look like? I mean, I went to watch Wicked for Good this weekend. I'm like, it's like the Land of Oz. I mean, this is going to be spectacular. This is really going to be amazing.
It's something that, we have 3 adult children, and we're blessed to have them all here in San Antonio, but we also want them to stay here. and any community has to reinvest in itself in order to prepare for the future. And I think that's a challenge this community has had and struggled with for years. David, as a banker, you're an economic developer. You help build businesses, you help build communities, not only as a banker, but as a servant leader on nonprofit boards. What would your advice be? Because there are people in this community who don't want to see us grow and change.
Right.
And I've always followed the philosophy that if you're not growing, you're stagnating or declining, which leads to the demise of your community. And so what would your advice be to city council members about how to grow this community?
Oh, I'd have a lot of advice. I'll boil it down to this: is surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that are honest, that you can trust, and listen to what they have to say. That would be my personal advice to them. Not be thinking about your political future, but really challenge yourself. I think leaders really should, as we talked about earlier, really good leaders they're willing to be challenged, and they're willing to. They understand I don't know everything. And so our city leadership. We're standing at a real crossroads right now. We're not just on a glide path that we just are managing. We're actually trying to usher in really big change. And I serve, as a banker, I've had the opportunity to serve people in the entire community, and it's true. We have parts of our community that really need help. We need to see wages increase in San Antonio. So my advice would be, think about how people who are around you actually have the talent and the skill set
and the financial
capital that are willing to help our entire community and do it in the right way. Don't think about your political career. Think about how we move forward in San Antonio. And that there should never be a misalignment between that. But I have seen it.
Well, David McGee, thanks for coming on. You're always a center of wisdom and great counsel and great advice. Appreciate everything you do for this community, because you and Paula have both done a lot, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Eddie. I always appreciate the time talking to you. You're always very challenging, and you do a great job with these. So I'm honored to be here today. So
thank you. You've been listening to David McGee, Amegy Bank CEO for the Central Texas region. This concludes this episode. Join us again next time for another edition of Beyond the Bite. Beyond the Bite is a production of Aldrete Strategic Partners, a public affairs and crisis communications firm based in San Antonio, Texas. Audio editing is by Nick Chamberlain of Every Word Media, and video editing by Matt Nelson of Peachtree Rose Marketing. I'm your host, Eddie Aldrete, and as always, we thank you for tuning in.